Welcome to Banyen Books, Branches of Wisdom, celebrating the joy of bright ideas and heartful lifelong learning. Branches of Wisdom is a series of intimate conversations with the world's most influential authors and visionaries. We explore spirituality and the human mind, ecology and culture. Most episodes are recorded with a live audience. You can join our live events and submit questions to your favorite guests. Check out our upcoming schedule at banyen.com. Since 1970, Banyen Books has been a rich oasis at the crossroads of wisdom and philosophy, offering resources for humanity's evolving paths. We're a locally owned, independent bookstore in the heart of Vancouver's Kitsilano neighborhood. Visit us in person or shop online at banyen.com. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews for the podcast. And now, enjoy.
Greetings, friends. This is Ian McKenzie, and I'm delighted to be joined by Ross McKeechee and Jacob Steele of Banyen Books and Sound. Welcome to you both on this morning.
Hello, thanks.
Hello, thanks.
And the purpose of this conversation is to just go over a little bit of the recent podcast revamp that was completed for Banyen Books. And just diving right in, I'd love to just name Ross as the host of the show, and while Jacob is the producer, if I understand correctly. Yep.
Yeah.
Great. And we were essentially the core pod that I was brought on to support the journey from where the podcast was at, which was quite robust already, actually, with a large back catalog, a lot of existing interviews already in the pipeline from their interview series with authors and spiritual teachers from all over the world. And I'm curious to hear first, what was the initial need that was identified that had you reach out and even know that, hey, you know what, we want to change something than what we have?
Do you want to start us?
I mean, I think the first thing was we realized that, Jacob was doing everything on the back end. Like he was booking our guests. He was promoting, organizing the website. He was, and then he was teaching himself to edit as well and editing every episode. And we got to a point where we had like a huge backlog of episodes that we had recorded live. But it was just really difficult for Jacob to keep up with that workload. So the first thing that we thought of was we needed an editor. And then in that process, we realized, well, maybe there's some other things that we could work on too.
And we also wanted to just, I think, upscale the editing to like bring it to the whole thing to just another level.
Mm-hmm. And I understand, one of the things we started with, of course, was looking at the intro and the outro as a way of framing the show, which is an important aspect of every podcast, both for, new listeners and even listeners who return, that, they start to build a familiarity, of course, with the way in to each conversation. And so what was unique also about this podcast was you have a very strong video component, right, where there's an audio version of the conversations you have, and then also the video is released on YouTube. And so I'd be curious to hear what was the process like where we reapproached, right, how to frame the podcast, because in this case, it even had a previous title, right? It had a former title, and through this evolutionary journey of this revamp, it even arrived at a different title.
You want to go first on this one, Jacob?
Okay, so actually, you start.
Okay.
You start, and I'll jump in.
Yeah, the intro, before we had an intro, it was just like this nice streaming river with the Banyen logo and some nice music, and that was great. And then we kind of thought, well, what if we eliminated, like we started with what I really loved was Ian, how you created systems for us. And it felt like, okay, well, what if we could streamline this process by creating this intro and outro video, so that we're not having to have me announce everything each and every time. And that would also present the Banyen sort of vibe and brand, and here's what this show is. It would just give a nice smooth entry and exit for the show. So yeah, I mean, Jacob and I went through a whole process with your guidance around, well, what do we want to say about this in a concise way? You know, I think we had no more than a minute. And so we kind of we did this script writing process for the intro and outro, which you really coached us along, and we'd come back to each week with our ideas. And then finally I recorded the voiceover with you, and you gave me tons of good direction on that. We selected music, we selected images and video to go along with that, the graphic design that went along with that. So that was a really cool process. And when we actually, now the final product is there, it looks amazing. And it gives us like, it feels like, oh, we've really gone pro here.
And there's like a new, maybe this is slightly separate, but there's like a new logo, a new title. So like, there's the whole package is just completely rebranded. And one of the things, I guess we'll get to this, is the this intro and outro video, which, like Ross was saying, cut out the necessity for him to go at length describing, like, this is Banyen Books and this kind of thing. This is the show. It's like all right in the video itself. But now when we go live on, like, live stream with Melon, which I'm sure we'll talk about, the video's right there, and so he doesn't have to say it live either. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for that. So yeah, great highlight there around systems, because that's definitely how I'd like to approach, how to essentially streamline post-production, from pre-production actually and post-production, because I find that it can get very time-consuming, of course, to recreate all these elements. And one of the also major shifts I think we did was shift over to Descript, right, which is an online platform that allows you to edit podcasts. One, it auto generates the AI transcript, and then from there you're able to edit the podcast or leave notes, for the post-production editor. In this case, I connected you both with Abdo Habani, who's great with being able to work through those systems that we set up and polish the podcast really with your guidance and direction, sort of freeing you up. And in this case, Jacob, I think largely too, from having to like handle a lot of that side of it, and allow you to really focus on the bigger picture stuff with producing a show and everything that entails.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Descript as well. Yeah. So what was it like sort of shifting from that system though now over to a system that allows for, again, like greater control and in creative guidance in a way to bringing forth your polished interviews in a good way?
I'll let you take that one, Jacob, because you were the one that was editing before. I know that Descript is, the cool thing about it is that it's cloud-based, so we can all, when Abdo is editing something, we can go in real time and see where he's at. We can put in our notes and track it. And I don't know how, I wasn't doing the editing before. I had a lot of empathy for Jacob in that process, but I'll hand over to Jacob to. Well,
I would just say, actually, just the fact that Abdo is doing it and he's doing it so well, I'm just almost completely hands off on that process now, but I have the capacity to make edits and stuff with Descript, and I might just make some last little tweaks and stuff, but it's like a huge difference in terms of like workload and systems.
Nice.
There's that function too with the what's it called? It gives the transcription of the dialogue, and being able to edit that seemed like a really cool feature where you can just, instead of having to find exactly where the person said something, you can read it on the side and just actually cut and remove that, and it actually removes that section of dialogue from the video too, which seems like a major like a hack to really shorten the editing process.
Mm-hmm. And you can grab pull quotes and stuff. Like you can find a section of the text just really quickly, and then just grab that if you want to share that on social media or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. I mean, I'd say the other major shift too was now from Zoom to Melon. And I understand you might still be using Zoom in certain circumstances, but Melon is what we're actually recording this on now, this conversation. But it allows for essentially a fully produced live event, within the browser that offers a lot more features than typically Zoom does, including, different kinds of layouts, backgrounds, banners and text and things to really upscale the experience of a viewer. In this case, because, you do have quite a online audience that likes to tune in to these talks live, and to be able to bring them a better experience with a platform like this, I think has also been a real boon.
Yeah, Melon has been amazing. We're loving it. That's been a great shift. Just like you're saying, just visually, you can like you right on the spot. You can make somebody full screen. You can have the logo. You can have like a banner come up and disappear. It's just like visually, it's just much. It's very cool. And it's like you can have your colors, your branding colors, or whatever. There's also with Zoom, we didn't have like an after room or like a green room for the guests, like afterwards that we could debrief after the event. So here you can do that now. Also, like I was mentioning before, you can have the video, like we created this intro and outro video, which just automatically comes up at the beginning and the end. And so like on Zoom, we had sort of manually created something like that where we had like some music and I'd do a screen share. And it would work, but it was a lot of work behind the scenes to just like cue everything up and make it all work and time everything. Whereas with Melon, it's just like automatic. You don't even think about it. And yeah, Melon's been really great. And another benefit of Melon too, which we've actually already started to see, is it's broadcast on YouTube, or we broadcast it on YouTube directly, and which has a bunch of benefits. One is that you already get all those views. So the people, like, say you get like 1,000 people come to the event live. Well, those are already 1,000 views on the video, and the video can just stay on YouTube on that same link. And then the I forget what I was saying. What was I saying? You probably.
Well, yeah, I think that helps with the YouTube algorithm, because basically it allowed, like, in streaming on YouTube instead of Zoom, I think allowed us to tap into a whole new audience potentially. Whereas with Zoom, it was just people that were subscribing to the Banyen newsletter or going to our website would find out about the event, the live aspect of it, and then later it would get posted on YouTube. So streaming it through Melon onto YouTube now allows us to, people potentially through the YouTube environment can join as well, that may have never heard of Banyen Books, or that maybe they're only subscribing to our YouTube channel and aren't in touch with our newsletter or our website and that sort of thing, or our social media. Yeah.
And another thing was, another thing that was that because the Melon display is so cool and you can control it live, it actually you actually don't necessarily need all the editing, the post-production editing, because like with Zoom, we you get the one shot, and then we were doing a lot of like fancy stuff, cutting back and forth between the full view to the dual view and stuff. But you can actually do some of that all that live, including having the intro and outro video. So we've been just like some of these things we can just leave the video up without any further editing.
That's massive. Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, a nice analogy I think is if Zoom was like having the guest call in for a conference call, Melon would be like inviting them into our studio where we can actually, we have everything set up, and it's just that much more professional seeming, and like the production value of the whole thing's so much nicer.
Now, I will say, sort of on the downside of Zoom, on a Melon, just people watching might think through, is that we haven't quite thought through fully the most efficient way to set up registration and tickets. That's a bit more complex, because Zoom had a really nice built-in system for that. It was just like really efficient, and it's beautiful. What I'm kind of doing something on Eventbrite and then sending people the link, but that's something I'm still working out, is like how best to get the flow of registration without it being as time consuming. But it from the public facing view, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good things to consider as well. Yeah, the different trade-offs for things and different workarounds that also may become features in the future. So I'm curious, yeah, what are some of maybe the comments that have come in then from folks that have noticed the change or have experienced this different up-leveled live studio experience? I'm just curious some of the commentary.
I don't think I've received any specific commentary on the format of it. But actually, one thing that's been really interesting, because we've only done two Melon events so far, right?
Yeah.
Pretty new.
Okay.
But one thing I noticed that is very different is you've got on YouTube, as it's streaming, you've got the comments coming in on the side there. We have that enabled, I guess, and that's been very interesting because the way we had it set up on Zoom was we didn't have that enabled, so it was people would comment to us directly, and then we could post things. But that's actually been quite nice. It's felt pretty engaged and stuff. What do you think about that, Ross?
Yeah, I think it's nice too. The Melon, there's been one little, and I think it's just because Melon's a new program. There have been a few times when I've signed in and Jacob's able to see the comments and chat, but I haven't been. So that's another thing for people to keep in mind is I think it's just because Melon's a new program.
They're working through some glitches.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might just be a browser sort of update. As the browser's different update, they might just break that connection. And I had that happen and then it came back. So yeah, I've given them heads up on that. So I'd love to know, again, through the whole journey then as well, what was helpful about having someone like me present, through the process? Because overall, right, I think it took about 3 months, I think, in total, start to finish. Certainly with, a kind of elongated patient schedule. It wasn't basically if somebody really wanted to we need this up in 3 weeks, maybe you could do it, if you really hammered it, but that wasn't the schedule for this. It was much more of a
just thorough.
Thorough, took time and which is great. And so overall through that journey, what was it like to just have me there present through the process?
Masterful, I'd say. I mean, yeah, we really admired your expertise and skill with just with in many things. I'm just honestly you're very, very clear and you know systems really well, but you also have a lot of heart, and you really I feel that you really get inside of what we're trying to do, and then you also are just able to kind of articulate. Okay, so I just felt like we were doing a good production. I felt like we were doing a lot of really strong work, but I just felt like you brought a whole bunch of other pieces of in terms of programs and systems, and also just visions for how to approach it, and input, even just even creative input. So yeah, that's just a few things. What do you say, Ross?
Yeah, well, I would second everything that Jacob said, and it was absolutely invaluable to have your presence there, Ian. Your insight into, like Jacob said, systems and what we were trying to do, and your ability to understand that and help us to present it in a way that was along with what we wanted, but also really adding another dimension to where we were going with it.
A whole new dimensions. Yeah. Really.
Yeah. And having that accountability and that feedback process on a regular basis, I would say for anybody who is starting a podcast or is looking to upgrade their podcast in some way, it's I wouldn't underestimate the value of that, especially someone who's been doing it like Ian has, and has the insight not just into the podcasting industry, but into the technical sides of sound and lighting and video and editing, all of those things, right? As well as the business side of it. So it was just Ian's the full package.
Yeah. And I would say we use the phrase a revamp. This is the word that Ian used. This is a revamp. I mean, it was literally a revamp from top to bottom. We just took it apart and reassembled it very efficiently, really quickly. And I think we met twice a week, right? We'd have the way we had it set up was in the mornings, or we just meet twice a week, and it was just we just go through everything and just radically upgrade the thing.
Well, let me say too, I really appreciated working with you both. And, when the call came in just through a mutual friend, right? Velcro, I think, was initially passed the need along that was made present. And for me as well, Banyen, I used to live in Vancouver, been to Banyen many times. My partner used to work there. So there definitely was like already connections there. And then, meeting you both and feeling a sense of, oh yeah, this is going to be fun and great. And it was. And so I'm grateful that you've arrived at where you're at, and the podcast seems like it's really, and again, it's not an immediate change of like blast off, it feels, right? It's obviously like it's a shift, and then now it's like a new foundation to grow from. And I'm really excited. I understand you've just relaunched the website as well, so it really feels like a new era, at least digitally, for Banyen as well. And to me, that's exciting, even watching from afar, of what you've managed to achieve, and the caliber of the guests, and the really like the production studio really is what it feels like. It's of course it's a bookstore, but loved bookstore for many years, but of course now it's this whole production studio as well. So it was exciting to participate in that with you both.
Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, maybe last question I have then.
Wait, I'll just throw in one thing. Also, just you were just very helpful with like also contacts like our Abdo, the editor, and also other connections that you may help us make.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe last question too is, so anybody that is curious about this, so for example, that maybe they do have a podcast and they're considering a revamp of this kind, now that gone through it, what would you tell that person specifically? Not necessarily working with me or not, but just how to approach that process. Like what would you tell yourselves, maybe 4 months ago when we started, of like, hey, this is actually a really evolutionary time of like wild creativity, really dream big or something. Like, what would you say to that person? Or be like, you know what, it's going to be more work than you think, pace yourself, or, what might you say to them?
Actually, the first thing that comes to my mind is just to know that there's so much more possible than what you're expecting, like, or than you might know. Like, there's just like the level of growth in every way in this area is so huge. So like, not to think that like, because you can kind of get comfortable with a certain way of doing things, and there's new programs, there's new like ways to reach people. There's just so much more. So to think big, I guess, in that sense.
Beautiful. Yeah, Ross.
Yeah, I agree with Jacob, and I'd say don't underestimate the value of like going through everything that you're doing with a fine-tooth comb and streamlining the process and thinking about how it might actually not only make your life easier, create more space for you to be creative with what you're doing by like setting things up in a new way, but it will also it serves your audience in a new way as well. I think when people can relate to what you're presenting in a new way, which is really big too.
Can I also add, sorry, another thing that it's a smaller thing, but the Google Docs, we ended up doing like a lot. Just everything was with shared documents, and just the flow was systematized in all ways. Yeah. Which was recommended.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to recommend then to the listener who's checking this out to check out actually the banyen.com. New website's up, looking good, and links to the podcast and both the video on YouTube and the audio versions are available from banyen.com. And anything else you want to say around the show, either of you?
I just feel lucky to be a part of it. I'm hugely grateful to Jacob for bringing me on board for this a few years ago, and I'm blown away by how it's grown and blossomed over the last few years. And Ian has been a big fertilizer in our growth. So thanks, Ian.
I second all of that. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you both for the time, and onward we go.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks.